I had been setting up the backyard since 5 in the morning when I realized they probably wouldn't stay long enough to sit down. By then, the string lights were already hung between the old oak tree and the fence post, exactly the way I'd seen it done in those Pinterest photos my neighbor showed me. The potato salad was chilling in the fridge, made from scratch with my mother's recipe, the one that takes 3 hours if you do it right. I'd even rented folding chairs from the church, 12 of them, because I wanted everyone to have a place. Today was my retirement party, 38 years as a nurse at St. Matthew's Hospital, and I was finally done. No more night shifts, no more holiday rotations, no more missing my own grandchildren's birthdays because someone else's grandmother needed her medication adjusted. I'd sent the invitations 3 weeks ago, handwritten, on the nice cardstock I'd been saving since my husband Robert passed 4 years back. My son Daniel and his wife Megan, their 2 kids, Sophie and little Jack, my co-workers from the hospital, a few neighbors. I'd even invited my brother from Phoenix, though I knew he wouldn't make it. The party was set for 2 o'clock. I'd chosen a Saturday specifically because Daniel always said weekends were easier. No school runs, no conference calls, no excuses. By noon, I had the table set with the blue checkered cloth Robert bought me for our 30th anniversary, the one I only used for special occasions. I'd made his favorite pulled pork, slow cooked for 14 hours. I'd baked a German chocolate cake from scratch, because that's what Daniel loved as a boy. I'd even put out the good china, the set we got as a wedding gift 51 years ago, still missing only 1 saucer from when Daniel was 7 and tried to catch a baseball in the kitchen. At 1:30, my neighbor Ruth came over with a fruit platter. She was the first to arrive, and she hugged me so tight I thought my ribs might crack. 38 years, she said, shaking her head. You earned this, Ellie. You really did. By 2 o'clock, a few of my former coworkers had arrived. Nancy from pediatrics, Tom from the ER, Linda, who'd worked the night shift with me for 15 years straight. They brought cards and a gift basket and stories about patients we'd saved together, patients we'd lost, the time the power went out during a blizzard and we delivered a baby by flashlight. I kept glancing at the driveway. By 2:30, Daniel still hadn't shown up. I called his cell, no answer. I texted Megan, nothing. They're probably stuck in traffic, Linda said, patting my arm. You know how the interstate gets. I nodded, but something in my chest had already started to tighten. At 3:15, the other guests started making excuses. Ruth had to pick up her grandson. Tom's wife was waiting with dinner. Nancy hugged me goodbye and whispered, I'm sure they'll be here soon. By 4 o'clock, it was just me and Linda, sitting in the backyard surrounded by 12 empty chairs and enough food to feed a small army. The string lights swayed gently in the breeze, and the potato salad was starting to sweat in the afternoon heat. I should go, Linda finally said, but I can stay if you need me to. No. You go. I'm fine. She hugged me, and I could feel the pity in her arms. I hated it. I walked her to the door and watched her car disappear down the street. Then I stood there in the doorway of my own house, listening to nothing. At 4:45, I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. Daniel's SUV pulled into the driveway. The doors opened, and out came Megan first, sunglasses on, phone in hand. Then Sophie, 16 and sullen, earbuds dangling around her neck. Jack, only 8, ran toward me with his arms open. Grandma! I caught him and held on a beat too long. Daniel walked up last, keys still jingling in his hand. He was wearing a blazer over a polo shirt. His work clothes. Hey, Mom, he said, kissing my cheek without looking at me. Sorry we're late. Traffic was insane. I looked at my watch. They were nearly 3 hours late. The party started at 2, I said quietly. I know. He was already walking past me, surveying the backyard. Looks like it went well, though. Where is everyone? They left. He paused. All of them? Yes. Megan appeared beside him, still scrolling her phone. We brought wine, she said, holding up a bottle like it was an apology. I didn't take it. We stood there in the backyard, the five of us, surrounded by cold food and empty chairs. Daniel grabbed a plate and started loading it with pulled pork like nothing was wrong. Megan picked at the fruit platter. Sophie sat in one of the rented chairs and stared at her phone. Only Jack seemed interested in anything, running his fingers along the string lights and asking if he could take one home. "This looks great, Mom," Daniel said with his mouth full. "Really? Sorry we missed the main event." I didn't respond. I just watched him eat. After 20 minutes, Megan looked at her watch. "Dan, we should probably get going. The reservation's at 6. I blinked. "Reservation?" Daniel wiped his hands on a napkin. "Yeah, we've got a dinner thing. Client appreciation event. Megan's firm is hosting it downtown." "You have a dinner," I repeated slowly. "Tonight. It's been on the calendar for months." He shrugged. "You know how these things are." I did not know how these things were. "You came to my retirement party," I said, "for 20 minutes, so you could go to a work dinner." Megan looked uncomfortable. "It's not like that, Ellie. We really wanted to be here earlier, but the morning just got away from us. You understand? You understand." She said it like she was asking for a tissue, not dismissing the last 38 years of my life. I didn't say a word. I just nodded and stepped aside. Daniel kissed my cheek again on the way out. "We'll do a real celebration soon, okay? Maybe next month. Dinner at that Italian place you like." Sophie walked past without looking up. Jack hugged my legs and said, "Bye, Grandma." And then they were gone. The silence that followed was so thick I could feel it pressing against my chest. I stood in the backyard for a long time, looking at the untouched German chocolate cake. 14 hours of slow-cooked pork, 12 rented chairs no one had sat in, the string lights still glowing in the fading daylight. Then I walked inside, sat down at the kitchen table, and did something I hadn't done since Robert died. I cried, not the quiet kind, the kind that comes from somewhere deep and old and tired, the kind that doesn't care who hears. When I finally stopped, I made myself a cup of tea and sat by the window. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Beautiful, indifferent. I pulled out a notepad from the junk drawer and wrote 2 words at the top. What I gave. Then I started listing. Daniel's college tuition, $22,000 a year for 4 years, paid in full from the savings Robert and I had scraped together since before he was born, his first car, his wedding, the down payment on their house in Connecticut, last year's private school tuition for Sophie, Jack's braces, Megan's emergency dental work when their insurance didn't cover it, monthly transfers to their joint account, labeled family support, $300 every month for the past 6 years. I turned the page and wrote what I asked for. The list was short. A phone call on my birthday, a visit at Christmas that lasted more than 2 days, a photo of the grandkids I could put on the mantle, someone to come to my retirement party. I stared at that second list for a long time. Then I underlined the last line 3 times. The next morning, I called the bank. A cheerful woman named Patricia answered. I asked her to review the automatic transfers from my checking account. She read them out one by one, and I listened, adding them up in my head. When she was done, I said, "I'd like to cancel all of them." There was a pause. "All of them, Mrs. Whitman?" "Yes. Effective immediately." She hesitated. "Are you sure? Some of these have been active for several years." "I'm sure." She walked me through the paperwork. I scheduled an appointment to finalize everything in person. When I hung up, my hands were shaking, but not from fear, from something else, something that felt a lot like freedom. That afternoon, I went through Robert's old desk. I hadn't touched it since he passed. His reading glasses were still in the top drawer, along with a stack of receipts he never threw away and a photograph of us at Niagara Falls, 1987. We looked so young, so certain that everything would work out. At the bottom of the drawer, I found an envelope. Inside was a note in Robert's handwriting, dated 2 months before his heart gave out. "Ellie, it said. You've spent your whole life taking care of everyone else. Don't forget to take care of you. You matter too. More than you know. I held that note against my chest and closed my eyes. He'd known. Even then, he'd known. I didn't hear from Daniel for 3 days. When he finally called, his voice had that tight, controlled edge I recognized from his teenage years when he was trying not to yell. Mom, what's going on with the account? The transfer didn't come through. I canceled it. Silence. Then, you what? I canceled the transfer. All of them. Why? I looked out the window at the empty backyard. The rented chairs were gone. I'd returned them that morning because I realized I've been funding a relationship that doesn't exist, I said. Mom, that's not fair. We're busy. We have jobs, kids, responsibilities. So did I, Daniel, for 38 years. And I still showed up. He exhaled sharply. Is this about the party? Look, I said I was sorry. Things got out of hand. We'll make it up to you. You've been making it up to me for years. I'm tired of IOUs. What do you want from us? Such a simple question. One I'd never been asked before. I want to be more than a checkbook, I said. I want to be seen. I want someone to ask how I'm doing and actually wait for the answer. I want my grandchildren to know me as more than the person who sends birthday cards with cash inside. Daniel was quiet for a long moment. Then, softer, I didn't know you felt this way. You never asked. The line went dead. I wasn't sure if he'd hung up or if the call had dropped. Either way, I didn't call back. That night, I made myself dinner. Not leftovers from the party. Those had gone to the food bank that morning. But something new. A simple roasted chicken with rosemary and lemon, the way my grandmother used to make it. I ate it at the small table by the window, the one Robert and I used for breakfast every morning for 47 years. It wasn't lonely. It was quiet. There's a difference. The next few weeks passed slowly, but not unpleasantly. I painted the guest bedroom a deep blue, a color I'd always wanted, but Robert thought was too dark. I signed up to volunteer at the hospital's free clinic, 2 days a week, just enough to keep my hands busy without burning out. I joined a book club at the library and read a novel about a woman who walked across Spain alone at 65. It made me cry in the good way. Ruth came over for coffee most mornings. We talked about her grandkids, her bad knee, the tomatoes she was trying to grow in her backyard. Simple things, real things. One afternoon, she looked at me across the kitchen table and said, "You seem different." Different how? Lighter. Like you put something down. I smiled. Maybe I did. 3 weeks after I canceled the transfers, there was a knock at my door. It was Sophie. She stood on the porch in jeans and a sweatshirt, backpack over one shoulder, looking like she'd rather be anywhere else. But she was here. That meant something. "Can I come in?" I opened the door wider. She walked past me and dropped her bag on the floor. Then she stood in the middle of the living room, arms crossed, not quite meeting my eyes. "I didn't know," she finally said. "Didn't know what?" "That you were upset. That the party thing hurt you. Dad said you were being dramatic, but I saw your face when we left. You weren't being dramatic." I sat down on the couch and gestured for her to join me. She hesitated, then sat. "I'm not trying to punish anyone, Sophie. I'm just tired of pretending everything's fine when it isn't." She nodded slowly. "Mom and Dad fight about money all the time now. Dad keeps saying you're being unfair, but Mom told him maybe he should have shown up on time." I raised my eyebrows. That was unexpected. "I think," Sophie continued, "that sometimes parents forget that grandparents are, like, people, too. Not just people who give you stuff." I reached over and took her hand. "That's a very grown-up thing to say." She shrugged, but I saw the corner of her mouth twitch. "I'm 16. I'm basically an adult." "Of course you are." We sat there for a while, not talking, just being. Then Sophie asked if I still had any of the chocolate cake left. I didn't. But I had the ingredients. We baked a new one together that afternoon. Sophie cracked the eggs while I mixed the batter. She burned the first batch of frosting and we laughed about it until our stomachs hurt. When it was done, we sat at the kitchen table and ate 2 slices each, straight from the pan. "This is the best cake I've ever had," she said. "It's the same recipe as always." "No." She shook her head. "This one's different. This one we made together." Before she left, Sophie hugged me. Not the quick, obligatory kind. A real one. "I'm sorry, Grandma," she whispered. "For all of it. You don't have to apologize for your parents. I know. But someone should." I watched her walk down the driveway and get into the Uber she'd called. She waved from the window as the car pulled away. That night, I pulled out Robert's note again and read it one more time. "You matter too. More than you know." I folded it carefully and placed it in the drawer beside my bed. Then I turned off the light and slept better than I had in months. A month later, Daniel showed up at my door. It was a Sunday morning. I was in my bathrobe, drinking coffee and reading the newspaper, when I heard the car pull up. I watched through the window as he got out alone, no Megan, no kids, and walked slowly toward the house. I opened the door before he could knock. He looked tired, older than I remembered, though it had only been a few weeks. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before, or maybe I just hadn't noticed. "Can we talk?" I stepped aside. He sat at the kitchen table, in the chair Robert always used. I poured him a cup of coffee without asking if he wanted one. "Sophie told me she came to see you," he said. "She did. She said you baked a cake together." "We did." He wrapped his hands around the mug but didn't drink. "I've been thinking a lot about the party, about the money, about everything." I waited. "I didn't realize how much you were doing for us. I mean, I knew about the transfers, but I never really thought about what they meant. I just assumed." He trailed off, that I'd always be there. He nodded, not meeting my eyes. "I took you for granted, Mom. I know that now. The party, the being late, not calling, all of it. I told myself we were busy, that you understood, that it wasn't a big deal, but it was a big deal. And I'm sorry." I looked at my son, 51 years old, sitting in his father's chair, apologizing for something I'd waited years to hear. "Thank you," I said. He looked up. "That's it? What did you expect?" "I don't know." Yelling. "A lecture, something." I shook my head. "I'm too old to yell. And I've given enough lectures for one lifetime." He almost smiled. "So where do we go from here?" "Forward," I said, "but differently. I'm not going back to the way things were, Daniel. I can't. I gave too much for too long, and I lost myself in the giving. I need to find my way back." "What does that mean for us?" I set down my coffee and looked at him directly. "It means we start over, not with money, but with time. Real time. Phone calls that aren't about needing something, visits where you stay more than 20 minutes. Getting to know each other again as people, not just as mother and son." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "I'd like that." "So would I." He finished his coffee and stood to leave. At the door, he paused. "Mom, I need to ask, are you ever going to start the transfers again?" I looked at him steadily. "Is that why you came?" His face crumpled, just for a second. No. I came because Sophie made me realize what an ass I've been. The money isn't the point." "Good," I said, "because the answer is no. Not because I'm punishing you, but because I need to use that money for me now. For the life I have left, I've earned it." He nodded slowly. "You have." He hugged me before he left. A real hug, like the one Sophie had given me. When he pulled back, his eyes were wet. "I love you, Mom. I love you too. Now go. And call me next week, just to talk." "I will." I watched him drive away, then went back inside and finished my coffee by the window. The fall arrived slowly that year, painting the trees in shades of gold and red. I kept busy with the clinic, the book club, my mornings with Ruth. Sophie called every Sunday evening, sometimes just for 5 minutes, sometimes for an hour. We were reading the same book now, a mystery novel she'd picked out, and we argued about who the killer was. Daniel called too, not every week, but often enough that it started to feel normal. He told me about his job, his golf game, the new Italian restaurant he and Megan had tried. Small things, but they added up. One evening, in late October, Jack called me by himself. He was 8 years old and still learning how to use a phone, so the call was full of long pauses and background noise. "Grandma? Grandma, are you there?" "I'm here, sweetheart. I made you a picture. It's of you and me at your house, with the lights, the ones in the backyard." I closed my eyes, remembering the string lights, the ones I'd taken down the day after the party and haven't put back up since. "That sounds beautiful, Jack. Mom said she'll mail it, but I wanted to tell you first. Thank you for telling me. I can't wait to see it." "Grandma?" "Yes? Are you still sad?" The question caught me off guard. "Why do you ask?" "Because Dad said you were sad before, and I don't want you to be sad." I took a breath. "I'm not sad anymore, Jack. I promise." "Good. Because I love you." "I love you too, sweetheart. Very much." After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of my living room and looked around, the blue guest bedroom, the stack of library books on the coffee table, Robert's photograph on the mantel, the note in my bedside drawer. I wasn't sad. For the first time in years, I really wasn't. At Thanksgiving, they came. All of them. Daniel and Megan, Sophie and Jack. They arrived at noon, right on time, carrying dishes and wine and a store-bought pie that Megan apologized for profusely. "I tried to make one from scratch," she said, "but it looked like a crime scene." I laughed. "Store-bought is perfect." We ate in the dining room, at the table with the blue checkered cloth. Jack sat next to me and asked 100 questions about what nurses do. Sophie helped clear the dishes without being asked. Daniel and Megan stayed until evening, until the leftovers were packed up and the dishwasher was humming. Before they left, Daniel found me in the kitchen. "Thank you, Mom, for giving us another chance. Thank you for taking it." He hesitated, then added, "I know I haven't earned back your trust yet, but I'm trying." "I know you are." At the door, Sophie hugged me last. She pressed something into my hand, a folded piece of paper. "Read it later," she whispered. I watched them pile into the car, windows down, waving as they pulled away. Jack's voice echoed down the street. "Bye, Grandma. See you at Christmas." When they were gone, I unfolded Sophie's note. It said, "You taught me what it means to stand up for yourself. I hope I'm that brave someday. Thank you for not giving up on us." I read it twice, then tucked it into my pocket. That night, I dug out the string lights from the garage. Ruth helped me hang them up again, strung between the oak tree and the fence post, just like before. We stood in the backyard as the lights flickered on, casting a warm glow over the empty chairs that weren't so empty anymore. "You did it," Ruth said. "Did what?" "Found your way back." I smiled. "I think I'm still finding it, but I'm closer than I was." She squeezed my hand, and we stood there in the quiet, two old women under a canopy of light, watching the stars come out one by one. The house was different now, not emptier, just more mine. I'd learned that love isn't measured in transfers and withdrawals, in casseroles made and parties attended. It's measured in presence, in showing up, in being seen. And if you've listened this long, maybe you needed to hear that, too. You're not here to be convenient. You're here to be whole. Take up space, use your voice, and never, ever apologize for wanting to matter. Because you do. More than you know.